Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Vorkosigan Saga Book Something, chapters 9 and 10 of Cetaganda. In these chapters, I never expected things to come to a head with Yenaro so quickly. I actually really enjoy this turn of events, but the information that he gives us about who set him up at this point doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. I'm hoping it's not really supposed to yet. Maybe I'm missing something. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Vicky for commissioning this episode, and Vicky is also here in the chat. Delightful to have you, Vicky. Appreciate you very much. You guys, this section is so, just like I said, it's always surprising to me how quickly the story is moving. Not just here, but like in a few other books. And I may have mentioned it on this show. Forgive me, guys, because, I do a lot of recordings and I can't always completely recall whether what I said was on the show I'm talking about or not. But I, as many of you are aware, have a fondness for cozy mysteries, of which there are a ton on the market. And, the deal with cozy mysteries is the trope, right? We're here for the trope. There are times where tropes are your enemy, and then there are times where tropes are what you're fucking here for. This is it, And for me, a lot of times with cozy mystery, I am very much here for the tropes. It's what makes it cozy, is that you kind of know what's coming. You're going to have your characters that you've grown fond of. You're going to have a bad guy. You know the bad guy is going to be caught. Justice will be served, yada, yada. And it's lovely. But the thing about a lot of this sort of tropey fiction, first of all, a lot of authors can get kind of lazy because they think trope means that they can just sort of do the most basic thing and it will be fine. But also, they think that since we're working with tropes, we can just kind of take our time getting to the point. And while sometimes that's fine, very occasionally, I tend to be, at this point in my life, more impatient with that than I used to be. Just because I have done so much reading and so much coverage of properties that I miss being surprised. So when I cover things for Spoil Me, it's always gratifying because, you guys pick things to commission. You're spending your money on it. So you want it to be something particularly good. And often that means that it has surprises in it. And surprises, unfortunately, a lot of the talk around that sort of thing over the past couple of decades has always been around like twist endings. And thankfully, I think we're moving away from that. Just saving all of your surprises for the ending is just such a putting all of your eggs in one basket approach to writing. You're basically putting all of your surprise in one spot, and if it doesn't work, you've just blown your load, and that's everything that you really focused on. So doing this where you're speeding things up a little, you're having some partial reveals along the way a little sooner than characters or than readers might expect, than characters too, though. It just really makes things feel a little bit fresh, a little bit more zippy. And I truly didn't expect the scene in chapter 10 to like go where it did, where basically it's Miles and Ivan full on confronting him. And it was delightful to watch it unfold because I was like, the whole time I was fully going, oh, are we doing this? Oh, oh, we are. We're just doing this, and it was great. So I'm ahead of myself. Let's start with chapter 9. Miles has just been summoned by a ba to go and speak to his lady, and Miles has taken his leave of Maz, who was sort of going, I don't know if you should do this. And Miles was like, what? Can't hear you. Sorry. Oh, you're so far away. I wish I could hear you. And he is very certain at this point that he is being monitored. After this investigation has gone on the way that it has, he just takes it for granted at this juncture. There is no way somebody isn't listening in on their conversation. And he's hoping she is also aware of this. And as it turns out, she is. And you guys know that I have been a little bit like not super impressed with how Miles seems to think that he has fallen in love with this woman that he knows virtually nothing about. He is but a child. I am trying to remember that, but I can't help but be a little bit annoyed. Like, Miles is just such a very particular person, such a type, that the idea that he could just be with a woman because she's beautiful and be satisfied with that for the rest of his life, I do not think is true. And I believe that he thinks it's true because he is young and he doesn't yet know how tedious that sort of thing can be after a bit. But that's neither here nor there, because what I was getting at was I had said before how much I sort of felt as if she didn't seem to be his peer in terms of intelligence, or at least overall like thoughtfulness, and incisiveness regarding the like what's the not espionage is not the word I'm looking for, but there is a subtlety to what they have to do to uncover things, and it felt like she was a couple steps behind a lot of the time. And so when he goes into this meeting, I had a big part of me kind of thinking, I don't know if she is going to know that you're being monitored, dude. Like, I didn't have a real high estimation of her overall understanding of things from that last conversation. And so I was sort of ready for her to like really fuck it up. And she doesn't. She does seem quite aware. And as the conversation goes on and she shares with him what some of her suspicions are, it does seem as if she is starting to is not what I want to say. It does seem as if she has more astuteness than I was maybe giving her credit for at first. I'm not so sure yet. She hasn't really been tested in a way that feels like she has to think on her feet quite as much. The way that she had to think on her feet before, I just wasn't impressed with the result. So we'll see. But I just I don't find her a very interesting character. And I'm really curious how you guys feel about it. Because I guess I kind of feel guilty, actually, is what it is. She is a woman in a position of power. And she is somebody who has, like, obviously got some really specific intelligence with her understanding of genetics and all of that, with the position that she's in regarding this whole, like, what do they keep calling them? Constellation. So it's not like she isn't smart at all, but I've wanted her to be a little bit more exciting and interesting in the way that she behaves toward Miles. And I'm just not really getting it. And there's a part of me that like almost feels, am I behaving this way because she is being portrayed as this basically like supernaturally beautiful woman, and there's an inherent bias in that for me. But honestly, I really don't think that's it. We just had an extremely intelligent, if really shady and what's the word I want? Devious, really, I guess. Character with what is her name? Cavillo? Was that her name? You know, the one, the little firecracker chick from the last book. So I guess I'm sort of waiting for this woman to like blow me away. And she's just not really coming through. And Miles is so unique and so intelligent that if she doesn't do that, at some point, I am never going to feel like they should be anything. And Miles keeps telling himself how hopeless this is and how foolish he is for even dreaming of it. And honestly, I do think that's true for a number of reasons. But really, when it comes right down to it, I'm annoyed that he even wants that because it's just so typical a response, especially from a man, especially from a young man. And I want him to be better than that. And understandably, he's not, and I really like that's just kind of how it is at this age and with these priorities that he currently has. So when they finally talk, um they go to like some other area where they are more certain that things aren't going to be like overheard. And she does this under the pretext of like, I heard that you wanted to know more about the genetic stuff that we do, so let me give you a tour, yada yada. Um, Obviously, he would need more exposure to build up an immunity to the mind-numbing effect of her. Lots and lots and stop it. Don't be more of an idiot than you have to be. Don't be more of an idiot than you have to be. That's some profound advice, actually. um, so let's see. Uh, won't there be repercussions from your security for bringing me in here? If they wish, they can request the Emperor to reprimand me. They cannot reprimand you directly? No. The statement was flat, factual. Miles hoped she was not being overly optimistic. And yet, by the lift of her chin, the set of her shoulders, it was clear that the hot Rian Degtiar, handmaiden of the Star Creche, firmly believed that within these walls she was Empress. For the next 8 days, anyway. Um, So she says that she knows which, I'm going to say satrap governor. I believe in the audiobook he says satrap, and I had just not clocked it. Which satrap governor is the traitor? The key was, as you said, a decoy. As you knew. Suspicion still glinted in her eye, lighting upon him. By reason alone, milady. See, this is the thing I'm talking about. The fact that she's still suspicious of him at this point, and because he pieced together this thing, it's just like, it's first of all insulting, as so as to be like, oh, well, probably you couldn't have just put that together yourself, even though in hindsight it's quite obvious. And also the fact that, like, would he be going through all of this just because just to like, what do you think he's getting out of this? That's like the ultimate question for me, is just to what end? You know? Um so she says Prince Slike Giaja had his consort bring him to the Star Creche for a tour, he pretended. He insisted I produce the Empress's regalia for his inspection. His face said nothing, but he gazed upon the collection for a long time before turning away as if satisfied. He congratulated me upon my loyal work and left immediately thereafter. He didn't ask to see the key demonstrated to prove it worked? No. He knew then. Maybe. I bet we gave him food for thought, though, seeing his decoy sitting there all demure. I wonder which way he's going to jump next. Does he realize you know it's a decoy, or does he think you've been fooled? I could not tell. It wasn't just him, Miles thought with a glum relief. Even the Hot couldn't read other Hot. So I felt like this was weak sauce. And eventually Miles comes to this conclusion as well. But in the moment, it seems like they just have so little to go on, and he is so sort of like just desperate for results that he gives this, I think, more credence than it really deserved. But like I said, they don't have a lot to go on at this point. Um, so let's see. Uh, this may only be part one to provoke armed conflict between our states. Um, this angers us, or angers you at us. Part two ought to be something that angers us at you. Even if I had handed the key back in that first hour, which I don't think was in his script, we still could not have proved we didn't switch it. I wish we hadn't jumped the Balura. I'd give anything to know what story it was supposed to have primed us with. I wish you hadn't either, said Rian rather tartly, settling back in her station chair and twitching her vest. The first unpurposive move Miles had ever seen her make. Unpurposive. I don't think I've ever heard that word before. I like it. But this is important. The consorts, the satrap governor's consorts, you never told me about them. They're in on this, aren't they? Why not on both sides? I do not suspect any of them of being involved. This would be treason. But surely your celestial lady used them. Why unthinkable? I mean, here a woman's got a chance to make herself an instant empress right along with her governor, or maybe even independently of her governor. No, the consorts do not belong to them. They belong to us. Them, the men. Us, the women, right? The hot women are the keepers. It cannot be Slykiaja's consort. It's a matter of the hot genome. Slykiaja is attempting to take something to which he has no right. It is not that he attempts to usurp the emperor. That is his proper part. It is that he attempts to usurp the empress, a vileness beyond. The hot genome is ours and ours alone. In this he betrays not the empire, which is nothing, but the hot, which is everything. But the consorts are in favor, presumably, of decentralizing the hot genome. Of course they are all my celestial lady's appointees. Do they rotate every 5 years along with the governors or independently of them? They are appointed for life and removed only by the celestial lady's direct order. That is really interesting to me. How differently this is set up for the men versus the women, and the fact that what it is she is preoccupied with, it turns out, is not the empire, but hot tradition. Tradition just doesn't feel like a strong enough word because it's like sacrosanct. It's more than tradition. It's everything that we live by. And I just find this a really surprising development that I wasn't expecting at all. The empire is the support of the hot, hardly nothing. And she just says, let's see. Oh no, he says then after that, surely the Empress did not mean to instantly fragment the support of the hot. No, not this fast. Maybe not even in this generation. But now her plot has been hijacked to another's purpose. The satrap governors. I believe your lady's plans have fractured. The emperor protects the hot women's control of the hot genome. In turn, you lend him legitimacy, a mutual support in both your interests. The satrap governors have no such motive. You can't give power away and keep it simultaneously. It's not in Barriar's interests for Slykiaja to succeed in his power grab. So far, I can serve you in this, but it is not in Barriar's interest for the Cetagandan Empire to be destabilized in the way your Empress planned either. I think I see how to foil Slyke, But in turn, you must give up your attempt to carry out your mistress's posthumous vision, at least for now. And I don't really know, like, again, I feel like her theory on it being Slyke and the way that he behaved, it felt very weak to me. Honestly, what it felt like, this is just a complete made up pure theory, is that Slyke heard there was a plan to take the key, and he found this way to come and check up on it and see whether that had been successfully done. And it was the only pretense that he could create that felt at all believable. And there was not a way to ask for it to be activated that was like, because the fact that the genome is the women's purview, I can't help but wonder if that would have been taken amiss. Asking to be shown this thing at work might have just offended potentially if she didn't know about this plan herself, if she wasn't aware of it. And maybe he just couldn't find a good way to do that. Um, it feels for me very much like the issue with him coming in, it's giving somebody who knows something is up but is not on the inside about it. So later on, when it turns out that he is not the guy that has been setting things up with Yenaro, I wasn't surprised at all. I was sort of like, yeah, that felt very, very thin to begin with. Um, so Miles is like, well, I might be able to like go in and take the key from his space and replace it with a decoy, but we're going to have to find a way for me to get in there. And he comes up with this idea to be disguised as a Ba, which she thinks is like just unthinkable. And he kind of he responds with, good. If it's unthinkable, nobody will be looking for it. Um, but he will need a woman to be traveling with him. At first, he's like, maybe you could. But it turns out she hasn't left in like, several years. So everybody would be very much noticing her leaving and probably would recognize an unfamiliar Ba. I am so curious how he is going to pull off this disguise because, he's meant to have no eyebrows and be bald. So either they'll find a way to cover them up or he has to like shave his head and his eyebrows off. How do you pull that off? Um, and let's see. Then they get interrupted by a call, even though she basically has like do not disturb on her phone, and somebody got through anyway because they double dialed. And it's hot, or no, she's hot, Rian. It's Gem Colonel Millisor. I've been trying to reach you for some time. My apologies. The Celestial Lady would have been the first to wish it. We have succeeded in tracking the lost LX-10 Terran C to Jackson's Hole. I need the authorization of the Star Crest to pursue out of the Empire with all due force. I had understood that the recovery of the LX-10 Terran C was one of our late lady's highest priorities. After the field test, she was considering it as an addition to the hot genome itself. This was true, Gem Colonel, but, well, yes, it still should be recovered. Just a moment. So she gets up, goes and opens a cabinet and takes something, um, and it's a block, clear, 15 centimeters on a side with the scarlet bird pattern incised upon the top, and places it over the console's read pad. She tapped out some codes, and a light flashed briefly within the block. Very well, Gem Colonel, I leave it entirely to your judgment. You knew Our Lady's mind on this. You are fully authorized and may draw your resources as needed from the Star Crash's special fund. And Miles is like, what's that about? And she's like, it's some old genome stuff. It's got nothing to do with this. Okay, look, I don't believe you. I am so sorry, milady. I do not believe you. Honestly, really, it's less straight up I don't believe you, and it's more I don't trust your judgment on this. I'm going to be really honest. I don't believe you are good enough at putting things together to say that these things aren't related. And later on, Miles reflects on how she almost has like a naivete to her. And I wanted to yell at him and be like, almost? Not almost, my guy. That's precisely what this is. Your girl is not like living in the same world as you are. She doesn't have the kinds of suspicions and the putting things together that you do. I just I don't I don't want this to be true. That's really what it comes down to for me is like I want him to be working with somebody who is up to par. And it bums me out that it seems like she just doesn't have the capacity to meet him at his level and play this game fully. So, yeah, I just her confidently saying it has nothing to do with him. What it feels like very much is more gatekeeping because he's an outlander than it is her using her head and trying to think through whether there could be a connection. It's like she doesn't even stop to consider it because she wants there to be no connection because she still feels the superiority to Miles that instinctively is trying to elbow him out of what she feels is Cetagandan business. And there it's just such a combination of things that I don't like. I don't like her superiority over Barry Arns in general. I don't like the feeling of superiority to Miles specifically due to the fact that he is mutated. I don't like the fact that she is still apparently a little suspicious of him and his motives after everything that has happened to him. There's just so much about her attitude that to me betrays a kind of like bone deep contempt that I could never get past. And it is wild to me how Miles can like be aware of it to a point and yet be totally willing to overlook it. Miles, I am going to need you to set your dick in a fucking cabinet somewhere and just like leave it for a minute because you can't handle this shit. Um so they agree that they are going to have to set up this thing for him to sneak on. Um, and she says, I shall help you make this attempt. He asks if she has an idea on like where on the ship he should look and whether or not this key gives off some sort of signature that they might be able to track. And she's like, yeah, actually, there is maybe. So I'll send the lady, to you with something that might be able to read what the sensor is giving off. Um, he suppressed a wild impulse to beg her to throw it all over and flee away with him to Barrayar. Could he even smuggle her out of the Cetagandan Empire? Surely it was no more miraculous a task than the one now before him. Yes, and what would be the effect on his career, not to mention of his father's, of installing a refugee Cetagandan hot woman and close relative of Emperor Fletcher Giaja's in Vorkosigan House, and how much trouble would trail him? He thought fleetingly of the story of the Trojan War. Still, it would have been flattering if she had indeed been trying to suborn him, if she'd at least tried a little harder. You guys. She had not lifted a finger to attract him, not an eyebrow arched in false invitation. She seemed straightforward to the point of naivete to his own IMSEC-trained, naturally convoluted mind. When someone fell deeply and hopelessly in love with somebody, that somebody ought at least to have the courtesy to notice. The key word, boy, is hopelessly. Keep it in mind. Yeah, please do. I don't want to hear it anymore, Miles. You are not in love with her. You're just not. You dodo bird. You fucking dinkum. My God. Uh, so they get their story straight, and this is when he has this moment of like trying to explain how there's nothing wrong with my DNA. My damage was teratogenic. Her face, always mask-like in its beauty, seemed to grow a shade more expressionless. Rattled, he added, your Cetagandans spend an inordinate amount of time on appearances. Surely you've encountered false appearances before. Stop it. Shut up now. She opened a hand, acknowledging without agreeing or disagreeing, and returned to her bubble. Miles, like, she had to have seen what he was doing there, right? The way that she went blank even more than usual was because she heard him trying to make a case for himself, even though that's not exactly what he said. It's clearly what he was driving at. And I am sorry, Miles, but that was just really embarrassing, and I hated that for you. Um, so then we have this lovely bit where Miles comes back to his group that's been waiting for him. And let's see, who is there that's waiting? We have Mia Maz, Vorobyev, and Benin. And this is so funny. Um, You've been granted an unusual honor, Lord Vorkosigan, said Benin, nodding towards the star creche. Yes, the hot Rian is a very polite lady. I hope I didn't wear her out with all my questions. And were all your questions answered? Asked Benin. You are privileged. One could not mistake the bitter edge to that comment, though one could, of course, ignore it. Oh, yes and no. It's a fascinating place, but I'm afraid its technologies hold no help for my medical needs. I think I'm going to have to consider more surgeries after all. I don't like surgeries. They're surprisingly painful. He blinked mournfully. Maz looked highly sympathetic. Vorobyev looked just a little saturnine. He's beginning to suspect there's something screwy going on. Damn. This cracked me up. I am so glad that Vorobyev is beginning to like click to this because I like him and I want to be confident of his like competence. And if he went much longer without clocking what was going on, I was going to start to be like, my guy, come now. But now we're getting somewhere here. Um So they head down, Miles continuing to, talk about the case and whether or not Benin has made any progress on it. They go to a new, like, this spot is wild. So they're going to go see some projects that the Gem, not Gem, is it the Gem? This one? Yes. So this is apparently the Gem women and the Hot women have two different shows, and this one is for the Gem women. And Miles makes a comment about how basically it's the Gem women like trying their best to imitate Hot women, which I can't imagine like trying to do that when you have been literally built differently. Like they have been given every advantage, and what's the point of trying to like match them? Like it's just, it feels so futile and so cruel to even suggest that it be tried. I was just irritated at the mere thought of it. um so this place is just incredibly beautiful out of the gate. Miles is like completely caught off guard at the way this like causes him to stop dead. Um, a woodsy vista framed a small artificial ravine. Scattered in the dusk among the trees and along the streamlet were hundreds of tiny luminous tree frogs, variously candy-colored, all singing. They sang in chords, pitch perfect, one chord rising and dying away to be replaced by another. The creature's luminosity rose and fell as they sang, so the progress of each note could be followed by the eye as well as the ear. The ravine's acoustics bounced the not quite music around in a highly synergistic fashion. Miles' brain seemed to stop dead for a full 3 minutes at the sheer absurd beauty of it all, till some throat clearing from Boroviev broke the spell. It was just really reminding me of like when people set up their Christmas music to their Christmas lights on their house and the lights blink in rhythm to the music. I know that's such a like, it's like the tackiest comparison that I could make to something that is obviously meant to be really advanced and beautiful, but I can't help it. That's immediately what I thought of. And I also haven't really addressed this because the Cetaganda seems so insufferable that it's really difficult for me to admit this. But you guys know how much of a sucker I am for the aesthetic. And I would have such a hard time continuing to be aloof about all of this. I like this is exactly my jam. And I feel like I would start to get annoyed at the fact that it was this perfectly beautiful and effective. How not? Like it's just the resources are what is talked about next, and there's a mention of how like the Baryarans actually have they use or collect a lot more in taxes, and how this is kind of like a sore point talking about the taxes with Baryarans. So it was sort of funny to me that like we get into that because it had occurred to me sort of, what all is going into this even. But I'm not trying to play, guys. I can't help the way that I react to beautiful things. It's just outside of my control, and I would really be a sucker. I really would, and I know it. That said, some of the stuff that's going on in this fucking place is horrifying. So, Miles is talking to Ivan and is like, "You have got to help me out. I was supposed to find a way to lose these guys at this thing. Ivan, you got to distract him, do something so that I can get out and see her the way that I need." And really, Ivan is very much like resistant to this. And there's this wonderful little story where he's like, "Miles, do you remember that time at Vokrostikin Sur Low when we found that old guerrilla weapons cache and you talked me and Elena into helping you activate the old hover tank and we ran it into the barn and the barn collapsed and my mother put me under house arrest for 2 months? We were 10 years old, Ivan. I remember it like yesterday. I remember it like the day before yesterday, too. That old shed was practically falling down anyway, save the price of a demolition crew. For God's sake, Ivan, this is serious. You can't compare it to. I just love these reminders that Miles was a fucking maniac, even when he was very, very small. It's so delightful to be reminded of this, you guys, because this dude, I keep sort of like assigning him a sort of like almost bookish personality in my head from when he was a kid, and that like it's only been recently that he has started to develop this like, you know what I'm saying, this thirst for adventure. And I know that's not true. When we saw that leap ahead in time at the end of Cordelia's book, he was out here riding the scariest horse available. Like that's immediately what he went for. So it's super clear he has been like this from the fucking start, and I've been shown that repeatedly. But I just keep forgetting somehow. I just keep on sort of thinking that this is a newer development, and no, it ain't. Anyway, so the way that they go amongst these things, you guys, oh my God, I hate this so much. A large tank of fish were filmy finned, their iridescent scales colored in the exact pattern of one of the Gem clan's face paintings, bright blue, yellow, black, and white. The fish swirled in a watery gavotte. It was not too remarkable genetic engineering wise, except that the proud and hopeful exhibitor hovering nearby appeared to be a girl of about 12. She seemed to be a mascot for her clan's ladies' more serious exhibits. Give me 6 years and watch out, her small smile seemed to say. So, I just want to mention here that inasmuch as I have said that I am a slave to the aesthetic, that is certainly true. But I also have a particular horror of the kinds of experimentation that have to be done on people and animals to achieve results like what we see here. And it's something that I keep sort of coming up against, is this feeling of like the result may be remarkable and beautiful, but what they likely had to do to get here is so horrifying that I can't just let myself enjoy it. Medical experimentation is something that I have a really knee-jerk reaction to that is so deep and visceral. I almost can't explain it. I don't even, you know what I'm saying? So this was meant to be this showcase of beauty, and to me sounded sickening. And then what happens with these kittens is so incredibly unnecessary. You guys, I don't even want to talk about it. That's like how fucking awful it is. So first, our friends are looking at all these cool roses. There's a girl with a fucking like unicorn that goes by. At one point they stop and there's these tendrils that are trying to capture Ivan, and this lady comes running off up and is just like, "Oh, there you are, you bad thing. Too much nitrogen this morning, I'm afraid." The rose let go its last tendril from around Ivan's boot with a regretful recoil and was unceremoniously plunged into the basket with some other writhing escapees, pink and white and yellow. What? Like, why? For real. They'd rounded a corner to an open area displaying a graceful tree with large, fuzzy, heart-shaped leaves filling 2 or 3 dozen branches that arced and drooped again, swaying slightly with the burden of the podded fruit tipping each branch. The fruit was mewing. Now, now that is just plain wrong, said Ivan indignantly. There are kittens inside the pods, a little kitten face looking out. And it doesn't seem like they have paws. No, maybe they do. I'm trying to see. Yeah, because it says it batted playfully at his hand with soft white front paws. Okay, so it looks like it's like from the waist up. And Ivan is saying like, they shouldn't be glued into a tree for a fucking display. And he starts to like undo it and pulls the flower off like an idiot. Ivan, honestly, I have grown to really love you, but I can't believe that you didn't think of this. And of course, as he yanks it, it gives this squall and then dies. And there's blood coming off of the stem. And it's very clear that he killed the kitten. And Ivan, as he realizes what has happened, is so horrified. Um, and he calls it grotesque. Miles said thoughtfully, "Oh, I don't know. It's not any more grotesque than the original method when you think about it. I mean, have you ever watched a mother cat give birth to kittens?" And I was like, "What do you mean, Miles? Do you think these kittens were like partially born? Like, what do you even, I don't understand that comparison. That did not feel like it was anything to me." Um, but the protocol officer sees this and seems to understand the issue that's happening here and says, "Would you like me to dispose of that for you discreetly?" Yes, please, if you don't mind. He hastily palmed off the inert pod of fluff onto the protocol officer, who hid it in a pocket handkerchief. You guys, he killed a kitten. Can you imagine? I would just never be able to sleep for like weeks after doing something like that. I don't care that it was an accident. It would haunt me. I would have nightmares like, oh my God. Ivan scrubbed at the sticky substance on his hand with his own handkerchief, spat into his palm, and scrubbed again. Yeah, exactly. So, they stroll to the next, the end of the aisle. Damn, said Ivan. What do you see? Our good buddy Lord Yenaro is here. 2 levels down, talking to some women. I don't suppose there's any way we can get him before he gets us. Don't know. Keep your eyes open anyway. They stared around some more. A gem lady of middle age and dignified bearing approached them and gave Miles an acknowledging, if not exactly friendly, nod. Her palm turned outward briefly, displaying to him a heavy ring with a raised, screaming bird pattern filigreed with complex encodes. Now? Miles said quietly. No. Her cultured voice was low-pitched alto. Meet me by the west entrance in 30 minutes. I may not be able to achieve precision. I'll wait. She pressed on. So, the protocol officer comes up to them and is like, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to go. Something has come up. There is a person here that we have identified as a professional, which means assassin. We don't know why he's here, but we are going to check up on this. And he takes off, and I couldn't help but wonder if this person was set up to be noticed to get the protocol officer out of the way. I don't know. It just feels like maybe not. It might have been that this person wasn't supposed to have been recognized. I don't know. So this is when they get approached by Lady Arvin and Lady Benello, who are both trying to jump Ivan's bones. And there is a real, like, competitiveness masked with sweetness between the two of them. And there's come along and see Lady Benello's sister's pretties while you think about it then. You too, Lord Vorkosigan, we've been neglecting our most senior guest quite shamefully. I think. Upon discussion, we think this might be a regrettable oversight. Her hand tightened on Ivan's arm, and she peeked around his torso to give her red-haired companion a bright, meaningful smile. This could be the solution to Lord Ivan's dilemma. In the dark, all cats are gray, Miles murmured. Or at any rate, all Barayarans. Ivan winced at the mention of felines. Lady Arvin looked blank, but Miles had a bad feeling the redhead had caught the joke. And this was just such a weird, like, again, Miles tells himself, I know that they are users, and then, oh God, let me be used. And then, focus, boy, God damn it. I love these conflicting voices in his head. Look, this is one case where even though he knows that they seem to have some contempt for him and he still wants to fuck anyway, I kind of get it. You know, it's like being on vacation where you're just like, look, I know this person ain't shit, but like, let me just get some. Let me just have a good time, you know? Um, but it is just the way that this is done. Mm. It is sort of like grimy. Uh, so this is when they get approached by Lord Yenaro. He's been giving my sister Veda a little help with her entry. Oh, and just what is her entry? I know it doesn't look very impressive, but that's not the point. The subtlety is in the smell. It's the cloth. It emits a perfume that changes with the mood of the wearer. I still wonder if we ought to have had it made up into a dress. We could have had one of the servitors stand here and model it all day. It would have seemed too commercial, Yenaro said to her. This will score better. And, it's alive? Asked Ivan doubtfully. The scent glands in the cloth are as alive as the sweat glands in your body. Nevertheless, you are right. The display is a bit static. Step closer and we'll hand demonstrate the effects. Miles sniffed, his paranoia heightened awareness trying to individually check every volatile molecule that entered his nostrils. The dome was clouded with scents of every kind, drifting down from the display's upslope, not to mention the perfumes of the Gem ladies and Yenaro in their robes. But the brocade did seem to be emitting a pleasant mixture of odors. Ivan didn't respond to the invitation to come closer either, Miles noted. In addition to the perfumes, though, there was something else, a faintly oily acridity. Yenaro picked up a pitcher from the bench and walked toward the pole. More Zloty ale? Ivan murmured dryly. Recognition and memory zinged through Miles, followed by a wave of adrenaline that nearly stopped his heart before it began racing. Grab that pitcher, Ivan. Don't let him spill it. Ivan did. Yenaro gave up his hold with a surprised snort. Really, Lord Ivan? Miles dropped prone to the thick carpet, sniffing frantically. Yes. What are you doing? Asked Lady Benello, half laughing. The rug isn't part of it. Oh, yes, it is. Ivan, said Miles urgently, scrambling back to his feet. Hand me that carefully and tell me what you smell down there. So he does and recognizes the smell of astrazine. Now, none of this means anything to me, obviously, but I can read enough into the context of the situation to understand this is going to be an explosive combination. And Yenaro is just clueless. Like, as the way they're reacting, I'm like, this was going to be a big explosion. But Yenaro wouldn't do this with, like, standing right next to it. And this is what Miles is just like, yeah, he may have been in on this, but he didn't know what it would really do. Somebody lied to him, and it wound up, like, setting him up to take the fall for this overall thing. And he asks the women to, like, give them a moment, and then the two of them round on Yenaro and are just like, all right, I want you to fucking watch this. So Miles shakes the threads off his finger that he took off of the rug. He waited till there were no passerby and says, Yenaro, take 2 drops on your fingers and sprinkle them on these. So he does it. He was interrupted by a bright flash and a wave of heat that scorched Miles' eyebrows. The soft report, fortunately, was mostly muffled by their shielding bodies. Yenaro froze, arrested. And that was only about a gram of material. That whole carpet bomb massed, what, about 5 kilos? You should know. I'm certain you carried it in here personally. When the catalyst hit, it would have gone up, taking out this whole section of the dome. You, me, the ladies, it would have been quite the high point of the show. This is some sort of trick, grated Yenaro. Oh, it's a trick, all right, but the joke was on you. You've never had any military training at all, have you? Or with your nose, you'd have recognized it. And he's like, what were you told this was going to do? And he at first tries to resist, and then he's like, it was supposed to basically make the two of you drunk so that you'd embarrass yourselves. And I would also get kind of drunk, but I had made arrangements so that I could take off and go to my room. I just wanted to experience that effect for myself to see what it was like. I wasn't, like, worried about it. And Miles is like, okay, so the first night, all that hand wringing, that wasn't totally feigned, was it? You weren't expecting it. And that made me feel a little bit better because, as you guys know, in that scene, I was just like, he seems genuinely freaked out. Like, I don't understand. And I just began to think he was a really good actor. But this is making a whole lot more sense that he is just some, like, he is somebody who, as we saw, is in that genteel poverty. He is used to having, or believes he should have, a higher rank in the society, and he doesn't, and is ambitious, and just is a prime target for somebody to promise him things in exchange for him playing a little prank. Um, and the thing with the sculpture was supposed to just like give him a shock, but not actually injure him. Which, it's funny that that happened and he's willing to do another thing this person told him to do. Like, evidently they were very convincing in that that was just an unforeseen accident that went too far. We didn't know that it was going to, have that reaction. Who knows what he was told. But yeah. Miles continues, I have something to tell you, Lord Yenaro, and I think you had better be sitting down. This isn't just a series of gratifying tricks played on the doltish envoys of a despised enemy for you to chuckle at. You are being used as a pawn in a treason plot against the Cetagandan Emperor. Used, discarded, and silenced. It's beginning to be a pattern. Your last fellow pawn was the Balura. I trust you've heard what happened to it. Yenaro is... Literally, his response is, this would be too crude. It would have started a blood feud between his clan and those of all the innocent bystanders. No, it would have started a blood feud between their clans and yours. You were set up, not only as assassin, but as one so incompetent that he blew himself up with his own bomb, following in your grandfather's footsteps, so to speak. And who would be left alive to deny it? The confusion would multiply within the capital as well as between your empire and Barrayar, while his satrapy made its break for independence. No, not crude, downright elegant. So that's a pretty interesting setup, and it totally makes sense and would work. And they talk about whether the Ba could have committed treason, would have the way that Bas are created, is that even possible? And their guess is that the Ba was tricked into thinking that it was doing something for the empire rather than any kind of treason. And Yenaro says he promised me a post, Imperial Perfumer. I know it doesn't sound mighty, but it would have gained me entrance to the Celestial Garden, maybe the Imperial presence itself. I would have been good. I imagine so. Yenaro's lips twitched in half a grateful smile. So then Miles is like, I have a little date with Prince Slyke now. Good luck, Yenaro said doubtfully. Miles paused. It was Prince Slyke, was it not? No, I was talking about Governor the Hot Ilsum Ketty. Miles pursed his lips, blowing out his breath in a slow trickle. I have just been either screwed or saved. I wonder which. Ketty set you up with all this? Could Ketty have sent his fellow governor and cousin Prince Slyke to scout out the imperial regalia for him, a stalking horse? Certainly. Or not. For that matter, could Slyke have set up Ketty to operate Yenaro for him? Not impossible. Back to square one. Damn, damn, damn. Yeah, I don't know. The fact that Ketty... I don't know, man. We've got too many names in the mix. I feel like everybody's being set up. I don't know. Some about this smells weird. Uh, so at this point, they run into, I can't remember his name, Veridi, right? He has come back. And Veridi explains about the fact that Yenaro was the target of the professional that they had found. And he's like, look, um, we are going to get you guys the fuck out of here. We don't know who hired the guy. Allegedly, he doesn't know either. Unless y'all have any guesses. Uh, and Yenaro is like, I have a guess. Would you care to share it? Yenaro regarded him doubtfully. Not at this time. Suit yourself, Veridi shrugged. We left him sitting in a quiet corner. The fast penta should wear off in about 10 minutes. You have that much lead time to do whatever you decide. Thank you, Lord Veridi, said Yenaro quietly. I think I will leave you now. Probably a good choice. Keep in touch, huh? Said Miles. Yes, we must talk again. So then when he leaves, Miles is like, okay, did you tell him the whole truth? And Veridi's like, mostly. The only thing I said that it wasn't our business. And I'm not totally sure that's true because the way Yenaro has been taking interest in you, I feel like something has to be going on there. Um, and he says, like, almost as if not almost, that's definitely what he's suggesting. He looks at Miles and is like, were you angry enough at him burning your legs to like hire somebody? And Miles is like, Jesus Christ, no. But I do think there's a connection. Um, and then Miles sees the lady that's waiting for him by the fountain. He tries to break away. And of course, Voridi is like, I'll come with you. And so they can't have the meeting that they had planned to. And he goes up to her and says, I will not be able to accept the invitation this afternoon. Please convey my deepest regrets to your mistress. But if she can arrange instead a visit to the man's cousin, I think that would be most educational. The woman's frown deepened, but she only said, I will convey your words, Lord Vorkosigan. Miles nodded farewell, mentally blessing her for avoiding the pitfall of any more complicated reply. When he looked back, she had already swept to her feet and was hurrying away. And that is the end of the chapter. So yeah, I am really interested. Like the fact that Yenaro was caught up in this and that he has managed to, first of all, he managed to not get killed himself. Secondly, Miles managed to avoid this explosion happening. It does, the word that Yenaro used was crude, and I don't disagree with that wording really, but it's almost like, was this so crude as to be like too, like a distraction? Is it too obvious? And I'm probably just overcomplicating things. Um, because there's no real reason to think that Yenaro wasn't going to just follow through with this. And it really was only luck that Miles was able to scent what was in the carpet. It's the combination of the fact that Miles could scent what was in the carpet because he had military training, which this person must have known he had. And then the fact that the professional that was hired to kill Yenaro was spotted and questioned, and how easy that also seems. And altogether, all of it feels so obvious that I can't help but be suspicious of it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, you guys. I don't know. There, I'm probably, like I said, I'm probably reading into it too much, but I can't help but kind of, it just, I'm also very curious, like now that Yenaro, I hesitate to use the words is on the same side as Miles. I am going to sort of phrase it that way just for the sake of it, but I guess what I really mean is more like now that they have potentially a common enemy, probably, I'm very interested to see what it looks like for the two of them to be working together a little bit more. Not necessarily like, you know, buddies or anything, but what is it going to be, is this guy going to be helpful? Because I can't decide whether Yenaro seems actually competent beyond these couple of, like, he got played here, and to a degree that is his fault. But then there are some ways in which it's not exactly his fault because he doesn't have the advantage of the type of education that Miles had. So I don't want to hold him to the exact same standard as Miles because it's not really fair. And clearly he knows what he is doing with, you know, the within the sphere that he travels. So I'm just hoping that, like, figuring out that they have this common enemy is going to be actually useful, because I want Yenaro to, like, bring something to the table and be of some help here. That's really where I'm sitting, Just, bruh, can you please do something? And I also kind of, because he is Cetagandan, I'm interested in getting a little bit more of, like, real insight into the Cetagandan method of, like, operating, because everything has been done from the outside with everybody looking down on Miles and Ivan. So if they have somebody who is more amenable to including them, how is that going to change the way they're going about all of this? Anyway, I have got to wrap up. I'm starting to lose my voice. You can hear that. But thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you all coming to live, and I hope you're enjoying the coverage. Until next time, everyone, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.